I built my life on blueprints and precision. Every line calculated, every angle measured, every space designed with purpose. For 15 years, I created sanctuaries for other people, homes where families would laugh, offices where dreams would flourish, galleries where art would breathe. I was Elena Voss, senior partner at Meridian Architecture, and I believed in the beauty of structure. I should have applied that same scrutiny to my marriage. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday in October. I was reviewing quarterly financials when I noticed the discrepancy, $47,000 missing from our client trust account. Not stolen, exactly. Transferred to an account I didn't recognize, bearing Marcus's authorization code. My husband of 12 years, the man who kissed my forehead every morning and called me his brilliant architect, was systematically bleeding my firm dry. If you're already invested in this story of calculated revenge, hit that like button and subscribe, because what Elena discovers next will make your blood run cold. I could have confronted him that night when he came home with Thai takeout and his easy smile, asking about my day like he hadn't just embezzled enough money to fund a small house. Instead, I did what architects do best. I studied the structure, mapped the foundation, and identified every weak point. The second transfer happened 3 days later. Then another. Each one precisely $47,000, as if that specific amount held significance. I installed keylogger software on our shared laptop, tracked his phone, hired a private investigator named Sullivan who specialized in financial fraud. What Sullivan found shattered more than my marriage. It obliterated my understanding of reality itself. Marcus wasn't just stealing money. He was maintaining a second family across town. Rebecca Chen, 34, marketing executive. Twin daughters, age 8, who called him daddy. A 3-bedroom colonial with a white picket fence and a golden retriever named Scout. Soccer games on Saturdays, family barbecues with Rebecca's parents, parent-teacher conferences where Marcus played the devoted father role with Academy Award precision. But that wasn't the deepest layer of his deception. The money wasn't funding his suburban fantasy. It was being funneled to something far more dangerous, and I was about to architect the most complex revenge in criminal history. I spent 3 weeks building my intelligence network. While Marcus thought I was working late on the Henderson project, I was actually conducting surveillance, learning the rhythm of his double life. Tuesday and Thursday evenings with Rebecca and the twins. Weekend business trips that were actually family camping excursions. A carefully constructed web of lies that required military-level operational security. The private investigator, Sullivan, was a former FBI financial crimes specialist who'd gone private after developing a drinking problem. He was brilliant, bitter, and completely amoral, exactly what I needed. Your husband's not just cheating, Sullivan told me during our second meeting at a downtown coffee shop. He's laundering money for the Kozlov organization. Viktor Kozlov. I'd heard the name whispered in the same breath as words like untouchable and connected. Eastern European syndicate with legitimate business fronts throughout the city. Real estate, construction, import, export. Industries where large cash transactions wouldn't trigger federal scrutiny. The $47,000 isn't random, Sullivan continued, sliding a manila folder across the table. It's exactly $1 under the federal reporting threshold. Your husband's been making these transfers for 18 months, always just under the radar. The Kozlovs pay him to clean their money through your firm's accounts. Then he moves it to Rebecca's consulting business, which exists only on paper. I stared at the folder without opening it. Inside were photographs, bank statements, phone records, evidence that my entire adult life was a carefully constructed lie. There's more, Sullivan said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Rebecca Chen isn't just Marcus's second family. She's Kozlov's niece. This isn't a love affair, Elena. It's a business arrangement. You've been married to a money launderer and professional deceiver for 12 years. That night, I sat in my home office, the space I designed as my creative sanctuary, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and custom shelving for my architecture books, and I began planning. Not confrontation. Not divorce. Not tearful accusations or desperate attempts at reconciliation. Revenge. Architects understand systems. We know that every structure has load-bearing elements and decorative facades, that pressure applied to the right point can bring down entire buildings, that the most elegant solutions are often the simplest. Marcus had constructed his life like a poorly designed building, impressive from the outside, but with fundamental structural flaws that a trained eye could exploit. I started with the art. The Henderson project wasn't just any commission, it was a private gallery for tech billionaire James Henderson, featuring a $12 million collection of contemporary paintings. The centerpiece was a Rothko worth $8 million, scheduled to be installed the week before the gallery's grand opening. I designed every inch of that space, including the security system. Motion sensors, pressure plates, backup power supplies, camera angles. I knew exactly where every safeguard was positioned and how to circumvent them. More importantly, I knew Marcus's schedule, his habits, his weaknesses. The plan crystallized over several sleepless nights. I would frame Marcus for stealing the Rothko, using his own money laundering operation as evidence of criminal intent. The theft would trigger a federal investigation that would uncover his connection to the Kozlovs, destroying not just Marcus, but the entire syndicate. Two birds, one perfectly calculated stone. But first, I needed to become someone else entirely. Elena Voss, the successful architect with a pristine reputation, began her carefully orchestrated disappearance. I started liquidating assets without Marcus's knowledge, selling stocks, closing accounts I'd maintained separately, converting everything to untraceable cryptocurrency. I terminated my lease on the downtown office space I used for private consultations, claiming budget cuts. Simultaneously, I began establishing my new identity as Vera Nakamura, a reclusive mixed-media artist with a mysterious background. Fake social media profiles, gallery connections through intermediaries, a carefully curated body of work that I'd been creating secretly for months in a warehouse I'd rented under an assumed name. The art wasn't just camouflage, it was therapy. Abstract paintings filled with rage and betrayal, sculptures that captured the feeling of being systematically dismantled by someone you trusted. Creating as Vera allowed me to process emotions that Elena couldn't afford to feel. Meanwhile, I was mapping Marcus's routine with mathematical precision. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he left our house at 6:47 p.m., claiming meetings with potential clients. He would drive to Rebecca's neighborhood, spend exactly 3 hours playing father to children who weren't even his biological daughters. Sullivan's investigation had revealed that detail too. Then return home by 11:15 p.m. with fabricated stories about difficult negotiations. On Saturdays, he would leave at 8 a.m. for site visits, actually attending soccer games and family events, returning by 6 p.m. with dirt on his shoes and grass stains on his clothes that he'd carefully explain away. The man was methodical. I had to give him that. His deception required the same attention to detail that I brought to my architectural projects. But he'd made one crucial error. He'd underestimated his opponent. The Henderson Gallery heist required 3 months of preparation. I needed to make it look like an inside job while ensuring Marcus would be the only viable suspect. First, I altered the security plans. As the architect of record, I had legitimate access to modify the system during the final optimization phase before the gallery's opening. I created vulnerabilities that only someone with intimate knowledge of the building could exploit, disabled cameras in specific corridors, adjusted motion sensor sensitivity in predetermined zones, installed override codes that could be traced back to Marcus's computer. The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. I wasn't actually going to steal the Rothko. I was going to make it disappear temporarily, then ensure it was found in a location that would implicate Marcus beyond any reasonable doubt. The key was timing. Henderson's gallery opening was scheduled for Friday night, a black tie event for 200 of the city's cultural elite. The Rothko would be unveiled as the evening's centerpiece, then secured in the gallery's main vault overnight. I would trigger the theft on Saturday morning, during the narrow window when Marcus was at his fake family's soccer game and couldn't provide an alibi. But first, I needed to plant evidence. Installing the keylogger on Marcus's laptop had given me access to everything: his emails, his browsing history, his encrypted communications with the Kozlov organization. I began creating a digital trail that would damn him. Searches for the Henderson Gallery's security specifications. Emails to anonymous accounts asking about art forgery techniques. I fabricated communications with known art thieves using spoofed email addresses. The physical evidence was more complex. I needed to place Marcus at the scene without actually having him there. His fingerprints were easy. We shared the same house, The same car, the same life. I lifted clean prints from his coffee mug and transferred them to a glass cutter I'd purchased using cash. His DNA was even simpler: hair from his brush, saliva from his toothbrush, skin cells from his razor. The hardest part was timing. I needed him to have no alibi for Saturday morning while ensuring I could account for my own whereabouts. The solution came from an unexpected source: Rebecca's Facebook page. She'd posted about the twin soccer tournament, including the exact time and location. Marcus would be there, playing the devoted stepfather role, surrounded by witnesses who knew him as Robert Chen, another layer of his false identity. Perfect. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold, autumn pressing down on the city like a heavy blanket. I drove to the gallery at 7 a.m., using Vera Nakamura's identification and a rental car paid for with cryptocurrency. The building was exactly as I designed it: clean lines, perfect proportions, every angle calculated for maximum aesthetic impact. Walking through those spaces felt like visiting a house I'd once lived in, familiar but somehow foreign. The security system responded to my override codes flawlessly. Cameras shut down in predetermined sequences, motion sensors went dormant, and pressure plates deactivated. I moved through the gallery like a ghost, invisible to every safeguard I'd personally installed. The Rothko hung in the main exhibition hall, lit by custom LED fixtures that I'd specified to showcase the painting's subtle color variations. $8 million worth of artistic genius, reduced to a bargaining chip in my war against betrayal. I didn't steal it. Instead, I carefully removed it from its frame and hid it in the building's mechanical room, wrapped in acid-free cloth behind the main HVAC unit. Then I scattered the evidence I'd prepared: Marcus's fingerprints on the glass cutter, his hair caught on the frame's edge, his saliva on a piece of discarded tape. The final touch was a note, printed on paper I'd taken from our home printer, using Marcus's laptop while he slept. Payment as discussed. The rest after delivery. By 8:30 a.m., I was gone. By 9 a.m., I was at a coffee shop 15 miles away, paying cash and avoiding cameras, establishing my own alibi as Vera Nakamura. The gallery's director would discover the theft when he arrived at 10 a.m. for the post-opening security check. Marcus would be finishing his third game of fake father soccer, completely unaware that his carefully constructed life was about to collapse. The FBI's art crime team arrived within hours. The Henderson Gallery theft made national news: $8 million in stolen art, a sophisticated inside job, and federal resources mobilized. I watched the coverage from my warehouse studio, painting furiously while news anchors described the brazen heist and unprecedented security breach. Every brushstroke was calculated rage, every color choice a meditation on betrayal. The investigation unfolded exactly as I'd planned. The evidence pointed inevitably toward Marcus: his fingerprints, his DNA, his digital footprint, his access to the security plans through his connection to me. But the FBI investigators were thorough. They didn't just find the planted evidence, they followed the money trail. That's when everything became complicated. Marcus's connection to the Kozlov organization wasn't just money laundering. According to the federal investigation, he was their primary art acquisition specialist, responsible for identifying high-value targets and developing infiltration strategies. My husband wasn't just a cheating embezzler. He was a professional criminal who'd married me specifically to gain access to wealthy clients and their collections. Our entire relationship, every conversation, every intimate moment, every shared dream, had been a long-term con. The revelation should have vindicated my revenge. Instead, it made me realize I'd been thinking too small. While Marcus sat in federal detention awaiting trial, I expanded my operation. If he'd been targeting wealthy art collectors through my connections, then other architects, other professionals, other unsuspecting spouses might be caught in similar traps. I started investigating the Kozlov organization directly, using Vera Nakamura's identity and my newfound criminal skills. The warehouse became my base of operations: part art studio, part surveillance center, part war room. Sullivan proved invaluable. His FBI contacts provided inside information about the investigation, while his private sector network helped me track the syndicate's other operations. What we discovered was a sprawling criminal enterprise that made Marcus's betrayal look like petty theft. The Kozlovs had infiltrated dozens of professional services, architecture, law, finance, real estate, using attractive, intelligent operatives who would marry their way into positions of trust and access. Rebecca Chin wasn't Marcus's victim, she was his handler. The twins weren't his stepdaughters, they were props in an elaborate performance designed to make him seem stable and trustworthy. My marriage had been a criminal conspiracy from day one. That's when I stopped thinking about personal revenge and started planning something much larger. The FBI's investigation into the Henderson Gallery theft had stalled. Marcus refused to cooperate, claiming he was being framed, and without additional evidence, the federal prosecutors weren't confident they could secure a conviction. That's when I decided to give them what they needed. Using Vera Nakamura's identity, I began reaching out to other potential victims, architects, lawyers, and financial advisors who might have been targeted by similar operations. I created a secure communication network, a digital support group for people who suspected their spouses might be professional criminals. The response was overwhelming. Dozens of people came forward with stories that followed the same pattern: charming partners who'd appeared suddenly in their lives, whirlwind romances that led to strategic marriages, gradual access to client information and financial systems. We weren't just individual victims, we were elements in a coordinated attack on professional trust networks. I began coordinating evidence collection, teaching other victims how to document their partner's activities without triggering suspicion. We shared resources, intelligence, and most importantly, emotional support. For the first time since discovering Marcus's betrayal, I felt like I was part of something larger than my own pain. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Rebecca Chin herself. Sullivan had been monitoring her communications as part of our expanded investigation when he noticed something odd. She was sending encrypted messages to an account registered under her real name, Svetlana Kozlova, Victor's youngest daughter and the syndicate's operational director. Marcus wasn't married to Rebecca Chin, a marketing executive and single mother. He was married to the criminal mastermind behind a multi-million-dollar infiltration network. More importantly, she was planning to eliminate him. The FBI investigation had made Marcus a liability. The syndicate's standard protocol for compromised assets was permanent disposal, and according to the intercepted communications, Marcus's accident was scheduled for the following week. I faced an impossible choice: let the man who'd destroyed my life be murdered by the organization he'd served, or risk everything to save him. The decision should have been easy. Marcus deserved whatever fate awaited him. But revenge isn't about what someone deserves. It's about what you can live with. I couldn't let Marcus die. Not because I still loved him, that emotion had been surgically removed along with my trust and my faith in human decency. I couldn't let him die because his death would end my chance for true justice. Dead men can't testify. Dead men can't provide evidence. Dead men can't watch their criminal empires crumble around them. I needed Marcus alive to bring down the entire Kozlov organization. Working with Sullivan and our network of victims, I developed a plan that would make my Henderson Gallery heist look like amateur hour. We would feed false information to the syndicate, convincing them that Marcus had agreed to cooperate with federal investigators. This would force them to accelerate their timeline, bringing Rebecca and her assassination team out into the open where the FBI could capture them. The key was making Marcus believe his life was actually in danger, so his fear would be genuine when the FBI wired him for surveillance. I arranged to visit him in federal detention, using my rights as his spouse to request a private consultation about our divorce proceedings. Seeing him again after 4 months was like looking at a stranger wearing my husband's face. Elena. Marcus looked genuinely surprised when I entered the consultation room at the Federal Detention Center. He'd lost weight, his carefully maintained appearance replaced by the pallor of institutional life. I wasn't sure you'd come. I sat across from him at the metal table, studying the man I'd shared a bed with for 12 years. I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth for once in your miserable life. His expression shifted, defensive walls rising. I don't know what you think you know. I know everything. I placed a folder on the table between us. I know about Rebecca. I know about money laundering. I know about the Kozlov organization. I know our entire marriage was a criminal operation. Marcus stared at the folder without opening it. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of fluorescent lights and distant conversations from other consultation rooms. How long have you known? He asked finally. Months. I'm the one who set you up for the Henderson job. His head snapped up, eyes wide with genuine shock. You. I framed you for art theft to expose your money laundering. I planted the evidence, created the digital trail, and orchestrated your arrest. I wanted to destroy you for cheating on me and stealing from my firm. I leaned forward, my voice deadly calm. But then I discovered the truth was so much worse than anything I could have imagined. Marcus was silent for nearly a minute, processing the implications. If you know about the Kozlovs, then you know I'm already dead. They don't leave loose ends. Actually, they think you've agreed to cooperate with the FBI. Rebecca's planning to have you killed next week. His face went white. How do you know that? Because I've been hunting them, Marcus. While you've been sitting in here feeling sorry for yourself, I've been building a network, gathering evidence, preparing to bring down the entire organization. I opened the folder and spread photographs across the table. Your wife, your real wife, Svetlana Kozlova, has been running a dozen operations just like ours. Professional infiltration, marriage fraud, and systematic theft. She's stolen millions from lawyers, doctors, architects, anyone with access to wealthy clients. Marcus studied the photographs with the focused attention of a professional criminal. Jesus Christ, how did you get these? I learned from the best. I met his eyes. You taught me that trust is a weapon, that love is a vulnerability, that anyone can be manipulated if you understand their weaknesses. Congratulations, Marcus. You created a monster. What do you want from me? I want you to live long enough to testify. I want you to help me destroy the people who destroyed us. And then I want you to disappear forever, knowing that you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering if today is the day I decide you've outlived your usefulness. Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. You're different. You murdered Elena Voss the day you married her for criminal purposes. What's sitting across from you now is something much more dangerous. The FBI operation unfolded over 3 weeks in November. Marcus, wearing a wire and followed by federal surveillance teams, met with Rebecca at locations throughout the city. Each conversation provided more evidence of the Kozlov organization's criminal activities, money laundering, art theft, marriage fraud, and witness intimidation. I monitored the operation from my warehouse studio, coordinating with Sullivan and our network of victims to provide additional intelligence. We'd become an unofficial intelligence service, feeding information to federal investigators who were overwhelmed by the scope of the criminal enterprise. The end came suddenly. Rebecca, growing suspicious of Marcus's behavior, accelerated her timeline. Instead of the planned accident, she arranged to meet him at a downtown hotel, supposedly to plan their escape from federal scrutiny. The FBI surveillance team was ready. When Rebecca arrived at the hotel, she wasn't alone. Viktor Kozlov himself had come to personally supervise Marcus's elimination, bringing with him a team of professional killers and enough firepower to start a small war. The federal takedown was swift and violent. 3 dead, 7 arrested, millions in assets seized. Svetlana, Rebecca Kozlova, and Viktor Kozlov were charged with racketeering, murder conspiracy, money laundering, and organized criminal activity. Marcus's testimony, combined with evidence from our victim network, provided federal prosecutors with enough ammunition to dismantle the entire syndicate. But my work wasn't finished. The trials lasted 8 months. Marcus testified for the prosecution, providing detailed accounts of the organization's operations, methods, and targets. His cooperation earned him a reduced sentence, 12 years instead of life, but he would spend those years in federal protective custody, forever marked as a snitch. Rebecca received life without parole. Viktor died of a heart attack 3 weeks before his trial was scheduled to begin. I attended every day of the proceedings, sitting in the public gallery as Elena Voss, the victimized wife seeking justice. The media portrayed me as a sympathetic figure, the successful architect whose life was destroyed by criminal deception, who'd bravely helped federal investigators bring down a dangerous syndicate. They had no idea that Elena Voss had orchestrated the entire operation. Our victim network disbanded after the trials, but the connections we'd forged remained. Several of the people I'd helped went on to establish legitimate support organizations for fraud victims. Others entered law enforcement or private investigation, using their experience to help other victims. Sullivan got sober and started a consulting firm specializing in financial crimes. We still work together occasionally, though he doesn't know the full extent of my transformation. As for me, I liquidated Elena Voss's remaining assets and completed my metamorphosis into Vera Nakamura. The reclusive artist had gained enough credibility during the investigation to establish a legitimate career, and my warehouse studio became a respected gallery space. My art changed, too. The rage and betrayal that had fueled my early work evolved into something more complex: meditations on justice, power, and the thin line between victim and predator. 5 years later, I've built a life that Elena Voss could never have imagined. Vera Nakamura is successful but mysterious, talented but dangerous, respected but feared. I move through art circles and social events like a predator in sheep's clothing, perfectly camouflaged but always hunting. Because my work isn't finished. The Kozlov organization was just one network. There are others: criminal enterprises that prey on trust, that weaponize love, that turn intimacy into vulnerability. Through my art connections and social position, I encounter the victims and sometimes the perpetrators of these operations. When I find them, I remember the lessons Marcus taught me: that trust is a weapon, that love is a vulnerability, that anyone can be manipulated if you understand their weaknesses. The difference is that I use these lessons to protect people instead of exploiting them. Last month, I helped expose a romance fraud network that was targeting wealthy widows through dating apps. The operation involved 6 different boyfriends who were actually the same man using different identities. The FBI arrested him based on evidence I provided and recovered over $2 million stolen from elderly victims. 3 months ago, I identified a marriage fraud scheme targeting immigration lawyers. Young, attractive women were seducing attorneys and gaining access to client information, which was then sold to human trafficking organizations. My intervention led to 12 arrests and the rescue of 37 victims. I don't do this work for redemption or moral satisfaction. I do it because I understand something that most people don't. The world is full of predators disguised as lovers, criminals disguised as partners, enemies disguised as friends. Someone has to hunt the hunters. Marcus was released from federal prison last year. He served 9 years of his 12-year sentence, earned early release for continued cooperation with federal investigators. I know because I maintain surveillance on all the major players in our case. Not out of lingering attachment or fear of revenge, but because information is power and power is survival. He's living in Phoenix now under a new identity provided by the Witness Protection Program. He works as a construction supervisor, lives in a small apartment, and drives a 10-year-old Honda Civic. His life is smaller now, contained within the boundaries of anonymity and constant vigilance. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about me, about the woman he married for criminal purposes, who became something far more dangerous than he'd ever anticipated. I wonder if he realizes that Elena Voss was a fiction created by his betrayal, that Vera Nakamura is the truth that emerged from the ruins of that deception. But mostly, I don't think about Marcus at all. My warehouse studio has become a pilgrimage site of sorts for people who've survived elaborate deceptions. They come seeking the artist who captured betrayal in abstract form, who transformed personal destruction into public art. They don't know that every painting, every sculpture, every installation is a meditation on power and vulnerability, a blueprint for survival in a world where love is often a lie and trust is frequently fatal. I am Elena Voss no longer. I am Vera Nakamura, architect of shadows, hunter of hunters, the woman who learned that the most elegant revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation. The blueprints of my old life have been incinerated. What stands in their place is something far more beautiful and infinitely more dangerous, a structure built not on trust, but on truth. Not on love, but on justice. Not on vulnerability, but on strength. I built my new life the way I used to design buildings, with every line calculated, every angle measured, every space designed with purpose. The purpose is survival. The purpose is protection. The purpose is to ensure that no one else has to endure what Elena Voss endured, because Vera Nakamura exists to prevent it. And if that makes me a monster, then I am a monster with a blueprint, a predator with a purpose, a weapon disguised as a woman. I am exactly what this world created, and exactly what it needs. The architecture of revenge is complete, but the construction of justice continues. Every day, I build something new from the ruins of what was destroyed. Every day, I make the world a little more dangerous for people like Marcus. Every day, I make it a little safer for people like Elena used to be. That's my legacy, not the buildings I designed as an architect, but the lives I've redesigned as something much more complex. I am the blueprint for what happens when trust is broken, when love is weaponized, when someone assumes they can destroy another person without consequences. I am the consequence. And I am beautiful. If this story of calculated justice and ultimate transformation resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more tales that explore the darker corners of human nature. Share this story with someone who understands that sometimes the only way out is through, and sometimes the only way through is to become something entirely new. What would you have done in Elena's position? Would you have chosen confrontation, escape, or the path of methodical revenge? Let me know in the comments below, and remember, in a world full of predators, sometimes the best defense is to become the apex predator yourself. This is Vera Nakamura, Architect of Shadows, signing off. Until next time, trust carefully, love wisely, and never underestimate what someone can become when you push them too far.